What are the consequences of sin? Or like what happens when you sin?
Consequences is actually a good word to use because it just literally means what comes after. What comes after sin? What is the consequence of sin? And sometimes we get a little simplistic and we just think of it as punishment and nothing else, that it is just God deciding if or when I see somebody do this, I am going to snap my fingers and make certain things happen. And there's an element of that, but there's more than one thing that comes after sin or when we sin. Sin is eternal separation from God. So that's the biggest and the worst consequence of sin, is that it separates us from him and his perfection. And that's the whole reason that we need salvation. We need a savior. It also involves earthly separation from God. And this is the relational side, where if we sin, then we are separating ourselves in our spirit, in our life, in our personality from who God is and what he is. And that causes us issues, makes us struggle with things. It interferes with our purpose. Then there's also earthly consequences, and that's everything from just natural results through legal consequences and things like that. So when you sin, you are looking at a whole range of different negative consequences. They're physical, psychological, social, economic. One way to think of this would be something like the user's manual for a tool or an equipment, some piece of machinery. And sometimes you'll have instructions there that will say, do not do this. Do not use it this way. Do not do that. Well, the reason is because if you don't follow those instructions, there's going to be consequences. The machine wears down more quickly. You get inferior results. Sometimes it can be dangerous. We can see parallels to that in medical advice. So the consequences of not following certain instructions or not carefully taking medication or not doing what the doctor says we're supposed to do or not do comes with consequences. And those are very natural. There's the example that we've talked about before of things like printed warnings. Do not go beyond this point. Warning, fall hazard. I think I saw a sign somewhere that said something about falling cows. I don't understand what that means, but the sign says be careful for it. If you're going to wander in that area, better have a really good umbrella. Those are consequences that just come from what we're doing. A lot of those are not necessarily about somebody standing there. So the person who wrote the user's manual isn't waiting with a baseball bat or a ruler or something like that for you to not do what's in that and then punish you by taking some sort of active step. They're warning by saying, look, this is what happens when you do this. And that comes down to sometimes just quality of life. In your user's manual for your vehicle, it will tell you things about the proper way to maintain it and things to be careful of when you're driving it. Well, if you're going to drive the car really hard and not maintain it, it's not going to work as well. It's not going to function according to its intended design and its intended purpose. So when we look at consequences of sin, we're really talking about this whole range of different things. First of all, yes, we're disobeying and disobedient to God. That creates separation. Yes, that then puts us in a position where he has the right and sometimes the obligation to actively do something to correct us, to punish us. But most of the consequences of sin really just come from God saying, this is not how I designed you to be. This is the way that the world is put together. And if you do these things, if you violate these rules, these are the natural consequences that are going to happen. You're going to experience all of these different things that are going to happen. So consequences for sin is a really good way to think of it because it's exactly what it is. It's just what comes after, what happens when we sin. And there's a lot of different things that can happen when we sin. And a lot of them are not God's deliberate, immediate, purposeful action. Sometimes those things are just exactly what you would expect to happen by natural consequences.